I've been building a tax compliance tool, and in the process, I had to go deep into tax law, eTIMS compliance, Income Tax Act, Tax Procedures Act, all of it. And in the process, I found 3 things that Kenyan business owners are getting wrong right now. One of them is about the invoices that your suppliers are sending you. They might look compliant, but they really aren't. So I wanted to test something. I took 250 plus pages of tax law and fed it into an AI tool called NotebookLM. The question was simple. Would it catch and flag the same issues? And would it find something that I had missed? Hi, my name is Kevin Kabu. I've spent the last 10 years of my life building an award-winning company with global and Pan-African clients. Let's get into it. Quick context, I'm building a tool called ZenTax, specifically an eTIMS invoice validation function. And for me to build a tool that checks whether an eTIMS invoice is compliant, I needed to understand what compliance really means. So over the past week, I went deep into tax law. I did research with AI. I read the documentation from KRA, and I had long conversations with our head of finance called Robert. And I learned a lot. I learned there are many things that affect businesses and business owners when it comes to operating in Kenya and the taxes that we need to pay. Then I sat down and thought, I was like, okay, if you're an entrepreneur who doesn't have the time or bandwidth to go that deep, can we use AI to our advantage? Can we load these documents into a tool and chat with them to enable us to get the same kind of knowledge without having to go through the process that I did? So that's what we're testing today. And I've uploaded 250 plus pages of KRA tax law and compliance documentation into a tool called NotebookLM. And at the end of this video, you're going to know about 3 compliance issues that your business could be affected by. And we're going to see whether AI will enable us to flag these 3 compliance issues as we talk to the documentation. By the way, if you want to understand more about NotebookLM, I have a previous video that I recorded. You can watch it up here so that you can get up to speed with 80% of NotebookLM in under 15 minutes. So here's the first thing. What makes an eTIMS invoice compliant is very specific. So there are some requirements that need to be on the invoice: seller name, buyer name, the KRA pins of both entities, a scannable QR code for it to be accepted and deemed compliant by KRA. Now, here's the interesting thing. When I started to do an audit of the invoices we receive from our suppliers in the business, I started to find that some of the invoices are missing these required fields. They have the eTIMS branding or KRA branding. They have the amounts, but there are just some specific elements that don't meet the requirements of KRA. So why does this matter? If you're claiming expenses based on invoices that are not compliant, when KRA does that cross-validation, what will happen is those expenses will be rejected and you'll be required to pay more tax. And you'll only find this out at that point in time when you can do nothing about it. So this is one of those gaps, and I want to see whether NotebookLM can pick this up for us. So let's see whether NotebookLM can surface this compliance issue. So I just typed in, what are the specific requirements for a compliant eTIMS invoice? And here we have mandatory content fields, financial breakdown, system identifiers, and verification and transmission requirements. Okay, so a valid eTIMS invoice must meet all these 4, and there's a breakdown in each. So the mandatory content fields, you have the identification of the document as a tax invoice, supplier details, purchaser details, transaction metadata, timing, product, and service. Then the financial breakdown needs to be there. So any discounts, taxable amount, tax rate applied, total tax amount. System identifiers, so unique system identifier, invoice identifier, receipt signature, and internal data. Then verification and transmission requirements. So QR code, successful transmission, and integrity. So on this one, NotebookLM got it right. It's given us the requirements of an eTIMS specific invoice, because this is right up its alley. It's just gone through the documentation and given us a clear summary of what makes an eTIMS invoice compliant. The second thing I discovered is about buyer-initiated invoicing and how it relates to 5 million shillings in turnover as a threshold. So here's the short of it. If you have suppliers who turn over less than 5 million, there are specific requirements about how the invoicing should happen. And this is important for us to know when we're onboarding our suppliers. And most businesses don't even have this information. And I came across this functionality or this gap when I was building the supplier onboarding for ZenTax. So that, because I needed to collect enough information from suppliers so that we can know exactly where to place them when it comes to being eTIMS compliant. Now let's see whether NotebookLM can make this connection. I'm going to ask it about buyer-initiated invoicing and the turnover threshold. So I have a question here that I'm just copy-pasting. And it reads, buyer-initiated invoicing and the turnover threshold. Any guidelines here? So the guidelines for buyer-initiated invoicing and the associated turnover threshold are established under the Tax Procedures Act and eTIMS Compliance Framework. All right. So the turnover threshold, the specific threshold for buyer-initiated invoices is an annual turnover not exceeding 5 million. This provision is designed specifically for small businesses and small-scale farmers. So the responsibility is on the purchaser. So when the supply is received from a seller meeting the 5 million threshold, the purchaser is legally responsible for issuing the tax invoice, which means that if you don't get this eTIMS invoice from your supplier, then it's your obligation to do it because it's appearing in the Tax Procedures Act. Then the platform, they should be issued through the buyer-initiated invoicing on eTIMS. Then purpose of ascertaining liability. This mechanism allows the purchaser to generate a valid electronic invoices required to support business expenditure for tax purposes. So I think NotebookLM has done a fantastic job here of bringing this out. This is one of its strengths. So I just read through the documentation and brought this up. Where the gap exists for us in business is to be able to know which suppliers fall into this category so that we're not left there when it's our responsibility to get or to initiate the invoicing from suppliers who earn under 5 million. The last one is the one that concerned me the most. The eTIMS systems allow suppliers to send eTIMS invoices with the wrong buyer PIN, and it doesn't flag them at all. Okay? So let me just say that one more time. Your supplier can send you an invoice and get the PIN of your business wrong, and nothing will happen. It will not be flagged. It will not, even if that KRA PIN does not exist, that invoice will still go through. And you can see how this will bring a challenge because you as the business will not be able to claim it based on, number one, the requirements of having a valid eTIMS invoice. And I want to show you exactly how this looks and how I discovered it real time. So my Claude project is what picked up this issue when I was trying to build out ZenTax. So I created a simulator that checks the validity of invoices and I put some test data in. And it's the one that flagged this, not the eTIMS system. So I want to show you how that looks like. So here is an eTIMS invoice. It has these details at first look. So now with the information on what that looks like, I just scanned the QR code and this is what it opens up. So when you see this, this is valid. This has actually been transmitted from KRA. The problem is this KRA PIN does not represent the business, and to another level, it doesn't even exist. So when I type it into here, you can see that it's brought an error. This PIN doesn't even exist. And that's a huge concern because you've already, you think the invoice is okay. You had no way of checking this out. You've scanned the QR code. It seems like everything is okay, but it's gotten your KRA PIN wrong. And it's just one digit that has made this go off in that direction. And you happen to have paid the supplier and you move on. And at the time when you're trying to do your expense, the validation brings out that you cannot claim this expense. And this is a huge, huge flag that was picked up. If you run a business in Kenya and you want to see more AI tools applied to business problems, no hype, no fluff, just real world application, please subscribe. That's what this channel is about. So here's the big question. Can NotebookLM pick up on this just by reading through the documentation? And we're going to find out just now. So, can an eTIMS invoice be sent by a supplier to a buyer with the wrong KRA pin without it being flagged? So what it's saying is an eTIMS invoice can be sent by a supplier with an incorrect KRA pin, but it will be flagged for review by the Kenya Revenue Authority. The system uses specific compliance classification logic. So flagged for review, an invoice is automatically categorized as flagged if the buyer pin is missing or mismatched. Validation requirement. For an invoice to achieve validated and compliant, the buyer pin must match the business entity records. Then automatic. Starting with the 2025 year, KRA will automatically flag discrepancies between expenses in a company. So consequences of a wrong pin. If an invoice is sent with the wrong pin, the primary impact falls on the buyer's tax position. Uncertain deductibility, tax risk, and mandatory fields. So by what this is saying, NotebookLM is just referring to its documentation, and maybe it's the question I asked. Let me ask, can an eTIMS invoice be sent to a pin that doesn't exist without it being flagged? One key thing to note here is the buyer is the one who's still left with the liability. So this is what it's saying. And I wonder whether this is true, and we'll only find out over time, because as we've just seen, there was a KRA pin that doesn't exist. It was sent and it seems like it's okay. I don't know whether that happens. And maybe it'll happen at the validation point of view, now when you're doing your income tax return. And the consequences for the buyer, if an invoice, its tax deductibility becomes uncertain and will not be counted. So NotebookLM has done a pretty decent job here of going through the documentation and giving us the answers. However, on the ground, we've seen that it's a bit different, and maybe we'll find out over time whether this flagging is something that we'll be able to see as the buyers or other people who are purchasing, so that we can know ahead of time. And that's why I'm actually building ZenTax. All in all, I think NotebookLM can help us understand more about income tax and how to get compliant without having to go through the hassle of going deep, reading the documentation. Of course, the consultation part is valuable because talking to an expert will always give you a lot of perspective. But if you just want to have an overview or quick knowledge about how to do it, then it serves as a really great starting point. And I really like this functionality here where you can add web sources like that are up to date. So I can say recent KRA notices on income tax 2026. So it's going to go online, search the websites, and it can enable us to add resources if they do exist into our notebook so that we're constantly up to date. Of course, for the documentation, it would be great to keep on updating it, but I think it's really good. So you can see here, there are 7 sources that we can quickly import, and I'll just do that, that give us a quick view of exactly what we need to do. And we can analyze, evaluate, and remove the sources that we don't need. But that's the usefulness of NotebookLM in even just trying to navigate understanding taxes for our business. So the title of this video ends with, here is what it caught. So let me give you an honest answer. I think it was 3 for 3. It caught the issues on what an eTIMS compliant invoice looks like, requirements for buyer initiated invoicing, and even shed a bit more light than what I thought I knew on whether you can send an eTIMS invoice without a valid or existent or wrong KRA PIN. It shed light on the buyer being responsible at the end of the day. So in terms of if you're a busy entrepreneur, you don't have the time to consult all the time, it comes to your mind, you're trying to figure it out, NotebookLM will get you 80% of the way there in terms of the knowledge and understanding what's going on. What it won't do is it won't help you with the systems bit. Because as we've seen, there are things that can slip through the cracks. And this is where we need to be on top of our systems. So as an honest view, I think it can't do everything, but if you're busy, you don't have the time, you don't want to pay for a consultation, and you still want to understand, NotebookLM is great for this. That brings us to the end of today's video. I'm building a tax automation and compliance system. I go through a full live build of the automation bit in this video. So please check that out if you're interested. And thanks for watching, guys. Let me know in the comments what kind of content you want me to create more of, and I'll be sure to do that.